AEW Grand Slam Australia took place a couple of days ago, and of course, in typical AEW fashion, it wasn't just stuff that took place in the ring, there was also a whole lot of stuff that took place out of the ring. So yeah, no messing about, let's talk about this card, the lead up to it, the fallout from it, from this pay-per-view event, or sorry, TV special, or sorry, Collision episode. What was this again? Stadium show. No, sorry, arena show. Let's just get into it, like the video, and let's go. So before we do get into the actual show itself, we of course have to discuss the absolute logistical and planning nightmare and disaster that was AEW Grand Slam Australia 2025. So initially, AEW Grand Slam Australia was announced at AEW All In to take place at the Suncorp Stadium in Brisbane, Australia on February 15th, 2025. This is obviously the first show for AEW outside of North America and the UK, and instantly right off the gate with this announcement, people were kind of questioning, why would you hold your first Australia event in Brisbane rather than Sydney or Melbourne, which would be much more popular markets for this show, surely? And kinda unsurprisingly, it was revealed after a bit of time that ticket sales were not doing well, and there was some silence on the status of this event, before eventually on November 25th, ticket holders and potential ticket holders were informed that this show would be moving to a smaller venue at the Brisbane Entertainment Centre, and that if you paid stadium ticket prices for this event, well, unlucky unfortunately, because you're sitting in an arena now to watch this show. During the build-up to this event as well, it was also never mentioned and unconfirmed whether this would be a pay-per-view or not, or a special episode of Dynamite/Collision like previous Grand Slams were, before finally on the January 15th Dynamite, it was revealed to be none of these, as it would be airing on Saturday, February 15th as a standalone TV special, simulcasting on TNT and Max, airing a tape delay of the show in the place of Collision at 8 PM Eastern. However, this was awful planning from AEW, and maybe there was an error in this announcement, because the time slot that AEW chose, 8 PM, was already being taken up on TNT by NBA All-Star coverage. And so the event was actually going to be airing after the NBA at approximately 10:30, once again on a 16-hour tape delay. It was just awful planning all round from AEW in regards to this event, and they even had to start selling buy one get one free ticket deals as they still struggled to sell tickets. But alas, we finally made it to February 15th to watch the show with a sold out crowd, so I guess all was well in the end, though the show being tape delayed meant that the entire thing was spoiled for me, but that's kind of my fault for scrolling Twitter, to be fair. Anyway, let's begin this show, shall we? The opener for this show was the big tag match with Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay taking on Konosuke Takeshita and the home country boy Kyle Fletcher. Immediately off the bat, you just notice how absolutely over Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay were in Australia. It is so good to have Kenny Omega back. I can't stress enough how much of an addition he is to AEW and how much he helps just by being there. The match was great, probably the best match on the card for me. Yes, the opener for me was the best one. It went quite a long time though, went about 24 minutes, and I do think that while it was great, it went on just a bit too long, and there were definitely moments in the match where they could have wrapped it up and should have wrapped it up in my opinion. Lots of high spots obviously. I think the main appeal of this match was just watching all the crazy stuff that Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay were concocting together and all the double team stuff they were doing, especially the finish, which was absolutely awesome, a hidden blade and one winged angel finisher combo, which put down Konosuke Takeshita for the 1-2-3, and I guess that's another issue for me with this match, is I think Kyle Fletcher should have taken the pinfall here. Even if it is his home country, I don't think Takeshita should have been the one to take the pin, but like I said, this was the best match of the night for me. It was awesome, really great action here, I gotta say. We then move on from that into the TBS title match as Mercedes Moné defended against the new homegrown star, I guess you could say, of Harley Cameron, who is just crazy over and has got over so quick to start this year off. And good on her, she deserves it. Talk about someone who maximized every minute that she was on TV for. It was a good match as well. Mercedes Moné continues to impress with her body of work so far in AEW. I know me just saying that is a controversial statement to people. I just think to me it says a lot about a wrestler when they're able to get a good match with just about anyone other than Britt Baker, obviously. Also says a lot about Britt Baker that Harley Cameron, who's been wrestling wrestling for a far less shorter amount of time than her, got a much better match out of Mercedes Moné than her. Mercedes Moné does get the win here to retain her belt. I thought the finish was just a tad bit flat though. She hits the Moné Maker, which didn't look too great. I think the Moné Maker isn't actually a bad finisher, but it's looked bad more than it's looked good so far in Mercedes Moné's AEW career, so maybe it's time for a new finisher. People were also saying that Harley Cameron should have won this match, and at first I actually agreed and thought that Harley Cameron should have won originally, but to be honest, nah, I don't agree. There's already a big shortage in top women's heels in AEW, which I'll talk more about later after the main event. And I think this match and entire program kind of made Harley anyway. She made a star out of herself in this entire match with the Puppet Moné, who is over, by the way. Puppet Moné got a huge reaction in this match, and it's just up to AEW from here to keep that momentum up for her and keep that star being built, even if she doesn't win this match. Do I trust them to do that? Not really, but we'll see. Next up was the Street Fight tag match. It was the Death Riders of AEW World Champion Jon Moxley and 1/3 of the Trios Champions Claudio Castagnoli up against Cope and Jay White. I didn't think this match needed to be on the card. I thought it would have made more sense to do Mox versus Jay White for the world title, but I will say the crowd singing Cope's theme song definitely made me change my mind just a little bit. It was a weapons fest, a brawl fest in the crowd and all that, which I kind of expected. Obviously this was a Brisbane brawl street fight. It's the kind of match I like though. I like stuff like that, and they positioned it in the perfect part of the card, right in the middle for this kind of match. I thought it was fine, not the best match on the card, not the worst match on the card. Still, I don't think it really needed to happen, and I would have preferred just doing Mox versus Jay White for the world title. And Mox also got the win here for his team, which I think was the incorrect decision. I think surely Cope pinning Claudio would have been a much safer and better decision to build up to that Revolution match between Moxley and Cope. But it was Moxley who got the win over Cope here in this match, which I just totally disagree with, to be honest. But then again, I also disagree that Mox versus Cope is even the world title program to begin with. Next up though is Continental title action, as Kazuchika Okada is defending his title against home country boy Buddy Matthews, who gets a great reception here but seemingly hurt his ankle from entering the ring. Regardless, Buddy Matthews worked through that injury, so fair play to him on that. It's a good / decent match once again here, though I'd say it was probably my least favorite of the show, not really due to what happens in the match necessarily, but more so due to the fact that it was placed on the card here kind of in the death spot, the second to last match, right after the street fight, which had a lot of brawling in the crowd and got the crowd super hot, obviously. But they did make it work though, I suppose. It was a good match, like I said, but I will say I'm still yet to see that version of Okada in AEW. I'm still waiting to see that Killer Instinct version of Okada from New Japan here in AEW. I guess Kenny Omega will be the guy that's going to bring that out of him when they eventually face off. I imagine that's going to be a unification match for both the international and continental titles, because Kenny looks to be challenging Takeshita soon. But anyway, we move on to the main event of this show. It's Toni Storm versus Mariah May for the Women's World Championship. I am very glad that this match got the main event. It was very much deserved. Easily the best story going into this show, and obviously Toni Storm is the hometown girl. It was a good match. I will say I preferred their match at All In, mainly due to the finish and the closing sequences of this match, where I think it went a bit off the rails. The constant kickouts, the finisher spam, and a roll-up finish, which yes, I know there were details planted for the roll-up with Toni Storm. She's been winning a lot of matches with it recently, but still, it wasn't for me, especially after the reign that Mariah was given. Regardless though, Toni Storm gets the win, like I said, a 4-time champion, wins the title in her hometown. Great way to close the show, the crowd were hot for it. Big ups to Toni and Mariah for getting the deserved main event spot, they made it work as well. And I wonder what's gonna happen with both of these ladies now this feud is over, or maybe it's not over. Listen, hear me out on my proposal for what to do with Toni and Mariah now, okay? So they're both one apiece. They've had 2 matches. Mariah May won in her hometown in London at All In. Toni Storm won in Brisbane in her hometown for this show. I think they absolutely should do a big stipulation match on Dynamite or at Revolution to properly close up this feud and close up this program before both of them go on their separate ways and just not interact with each other for at least a couple of years. And honestly, if they are to do this big blow-off match, it would have to be a big stipulation match. Obviously, that would make the most sense to close off this feud. and I would have Mariah May win the title back. Mariah May, I alluded to earlier, her booking with her title reign wasn't that great from AEW. It feels like there was no real programs for her during her time as champion other than the Toni Storm one. And the thing is, her matches with the belt were good. Her defense against Willow was great, her defense against Thunder Rosa was good as well, but there was no real story for any of them, and Mariah May was hardly ever doing anything meaningful on TV, which she deserved better in my opinion. So give her the belt again, give her a proper reign, and Toni Storm will be just fine without the belt. She has a character that can keep her busy without the belt. And I said earlier, but AEW has a real problem and a real shortage of top heels in the women's division. It's really only Mariah May and Mercedes Moné. I guess they're building up Megan Bayne now as one of the next top heels, so they really need to make sure they nail that. But Deonna Purrazzo isn't really being used on TV anymore. Harley Cameron isn't a heel anymore. Neither is Chris Statlander, so they really do need to push up some more big heel names if they were to keep Toni Storm as the champion, in my opinion. Because right now, there's really no feasible challenges for her, in my opinion, other than Megan Bayne, who still just needs a bit more proper build. But anyway, that's the show. For my thoughts overall, I thought it was a solid little TV special for AEW. Every match was good. The only match to really properly blow me away was the opener, but still, every match was good, it was solid, and it was a fun show for the weekend. But of course, AEW found themselves in their fair share of discourse and drama, and this time, I gotta say, it's for the dumbest reason possible. Because apparently people are pretending to be mad and upset about the fact that AEW had to borrow a smaller ring from an indie promotion for this show. Which, listen, I don't work in the wrestling business, but I know enough about the business to know that nearly every company under the sun at one point or another has borrowed a ring from another promotion. And logistically, for AEW to borrow a ring in Australia, it kinda makes sense. It's a lot extra money to travel a ring over from the US, so why not just borrow one locally? It makes no difference whatsoever. I really don't know what everyone was crying about. Buddy Matthews did tweet and delete a tweet that said he twisted his ankle because of the ring setup, followed by a troll picture. Buddy Matthews just loves to stir the pot, doesn't he? But for me, this was totally useless discourse. Who gives a fuck that they used another ring? My word. In other news for the show, Tony Khan also came out and got booed by the Australia crowd, which is, you know, kinda deserved, due to the fact that a lot of people in attendance paid big money for a stadium show, and obviously what they got was an arena show. I don't really blame them for letting their feelings be known, but they would cheer him minutes again later when he announced that they would be coming back to Australia, so fair enough, I guess. But yeah, that's the story of AEW Grand Slam Australia, just a whirlwind all round, an awfully planned event, which of course ended up being a good show. I never doubted the show was ever going to be bad, but logistically and planning wise, it was a disaster. And I'm not talking about the renting of the ring. Who cares about that? I'm talking about the actual planning in terms of the stadium and the venue and the TV broadcasting. That was all a shit show. But overall, once again, it was a very solid weekend show for AEW here with Grand Slam Australia. But guys, that's going to do it from me. If you did enjoy this video, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe with notifications on so you never miss a video on the channel. I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye and keep on rolling.